Hey everyone, welcome back. You know I'm all about helping you reach those goals, but sometimes we need a little extra push, right?
Little motivation boost?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, motivation. We've got 3 sources lined up for this deep dive. 5 tips to supercharge your motivation. That one sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
Equity theory and employee motivation. So I'll be looking at motivation at work.
Very important.
And finally, fire up your motivation. Let's see if this deep dive can fire up our own motivation.
It's interesting how motivation isn't just some magical thing. We can really break it down and figure out how it works, and then use it to our advantage, both in our personal lives and at work.
Okay, let's get into it. One of the things that jumped out at me from 5 tips to supercharge your motivation was this idea of a picture board, like a vision board.
Yeah, vision board. I've heard of those.
So they talk about how important it is to visualize your goals and actually create a board with images of what you want to achieve.
It might sound a little, woo-woo to some people, but there's a ton of research backing up the power of visualization. Think about Olympic athletes or successful entrepreneurs. A lot of them use this technique.
Really?
Yeah, to help them reach peak performance.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's not just daydreaming, though.
Right.
It's about really vividly picturing your desired outcome, engaging all your senses.
So you can almost feel it happening.
Exactly. What would it feel like to achieve that goal? What would you see, hear, even smell? And when you do this, it can actually start to rewire your brain for success. It strengthens those neural pathways.
So you're basically creating a mental roadmap to your goals. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but are you ready for this? 5 tips to supercharge your motivation. Also had a suggestion that I did not see coming. Get angry.
Ooh, that sounds a little dangerous.
I know, right?
But, actually, anger can be a really powerful motivator if we know how to use it correctly.
Okay, so explain this to me.
Think about it. Are you frustrated with where you're at right now in your life?
I think we all have things we're frustrated with.
Exactly. Maybe it's debt, or a job you hate, or just feeling stuck. That frustration, that anger, it can actually be transformed into energy for change.
So it's not about being negative or yelling at people.
No, not at all.
It's about taking that frustration and channeling it into positive action.
Exactly. Think about the energy that fuels so many social movements.
Yeah.
A lot of them are driven by a collective anger towards injustice, right?
That's true. Okay, that's a really interesting way to think about it. The next tip from 5 tips to supercharge your motivation is, maybe a bit of a reality check. It's the reminder that time is a non-renewable resource.
Ooh, that one hits hard.
I know, right? We can't get it back.
It makes you think, doesn't it? And this ties into the concept of opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah. It means every choice we make has a cost, the cost of what we're giving up by making that choice.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
So the question becomes, are we spending our time on things that are truly important to us, things that align with our goals?
Or are we just letting time slip away on things that don't really matter?
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really helpful to think about the last 24 hours. How did you use your time? Could you have maybe used it differently?
Ooh, you're making me think. Okay, get ready for this. The next analogy from 5 tips to supercharge your motivation is one of my absolute favorites. Are you a sheep or are you a tiger?
Okay, I like where this is going.
Are you happy just following the herd or are you ready to blaze your own trail?
That's such a great way to put it. I think what's so powerful about this is that it really challenges us to think about our own comfort zones. Are we playing it safe? Just going with the flow? Or are we willing to step outside of that, take some risks, embrace what makes us unique?
I love that.
Because, let's be real, there's so much pressure in society to conform, to fit in.
So much pressure.
Right. But true motivation, I think, often comes from having the courage to push back against those expectations and say, nope, this is what matters to me. This is the path I'm going to forge.
Yes. Defining success on your own terms.
Exactly. Now, the tiger path, it isn't always easy. There might be setbacks and challenges along the way, but I think the rewards are often so much greater.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the journey, right? But you know what often gets in the way of us becoming those tigers?
What's that?
Fear. And 5 tips to supercharge your motivation actually has some pretty bold advice for dealing with fear.
Let's hear it.
They say to fear your fear.
Fear your fear. What does that even mean?
Well, they explain that a lot of times our fears are actually coming from our own minds. It's those what-if scenarios that we create in our heads.
Oh, yeah. We tend to blow things way out of proportion.
Right. And we overestimate the risks and underestimate our own ability to handle them.
we're way tougher than we give ourselves credit for.
It's about recognizing that a lot of times our fear is based on imagined consequences, not what's actually happening.
So it's not real.
Exactly. And if we can break down our goals into smaller, more manageable steps, those fears become much less intimidating.
It's like climbing a mountain. It seems overwhelming at first.
Yeah.
But if you just focus on taking one step at a time, you eventually reach the summit.
That's a great analogy. So sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't the challenge itself.
Right.
It's the fear that we build up around it.
Exactly.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about personal motivation, but now I want to shift gears a bit. Let's talk about motivation in the workplace. That's where our next source, equity theory and employee motivation, comes in.
This is such a fascinating topic.
Right.
Because it looks at how our perception of fairness at work directly impacts how motivated we are.
So it's not just about the work itself.
That's
It's about how we're treated and whether we feel valued.
Exactly. It's all about the balance between what we put in, so our time, our skills, our effort, and what we get back in return, like salary, recognition, flexibility. And when we feel like that balance is off, that's when we start to get demotivated.
Makes total sense.
Right.
And I think it's important to remember that what feels like a fair reward to one person might feel completely different to someone else.
Absolutely. It depends on your own personal values and your sense of what's fair.
So there's no like one-size-fits-all approach to motivation in the workplace.
Exactly. To really understand equity theory, we need to look at some specific examples.
Okay, let's do that.
So imagine two employees doing the exact same job. They're both putting in the same amount of effort, but one is consistently being paid less than the other.
Ooh, yeah, that wouldn't feel very fair.
Right.
Right.
Or what about a situation where promotions are given out based on favoritism rather than actual merit or performance?
I've definitely seen that happen.
It happens more often than we'd like to think, right?
Right.
And these kinds of situations, they create resentment, they lead to decreased effort, and ultimately just a drop in motivation all around.
So it's not just about how much we're getting, but whether we feel like it's fair in comparison to what others are getting.
Exactly. And also in comparison to our own contributions.
I see. So it's all about striking that balance. Now, let's move on to fire up your motivation. This source is all about putting motivation into action. They have some really great advice like celebrating your accomplishments no matter how big or small.
I love that.
Me too. And using rewards effectively to keep yourself motivated and surrounding yourself with positive and supportive people.
So important.
It is, and it makes me wonder, what's the psychology behind all this?
That's where things get really interesting. We'll dive into that right after the break.
So when we talk about celebrating accomplishments and using rewards, we're really tapping into the power of positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement, I've heard that term before, but remind me what it means.
Basically, it's the idea that when we reward a behavior,
We're more likely to repeat that behavior in the future. So every time you celebrate a win, whether it's a big milestone or just a small step in the right direction, you're training your brain to associate effort with positive outcomes.
like a little reward system for your brain.
Exactly. And this can create a really powerful feedback loop that helps to boost your motivation and keep you moving forward.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
It's like building momentum.
Yeah. And fire up your motivation really stresses the importance of surrounding yourself with a positive support system.
Oh, this is huge EE. I can't emphasize enough how much of a difference this can make. Having people in your life who believe in you, who encourage you, who celebrate your wins alongside you.
It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad.
Exactly. They can give you that extra boost when you're feeling down, help you stay accountable to your goals, and just create a more positive and supportive environment overall. And let's be real, trying to achieve anything worthwhile on your own can be incredibly challenging. But when you have that support system in place, it makes the journey so much easier and a lot more enjoyable too.
That's so true. It's all about creating that sense of community and shared purpose. But, sometimes it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Fire up your motivation also acknowledges that sometimes our motivation comes from a different place, a slightly darker place, perhaps.
Oh, I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about, that desire to prove others wrong.
Yes, like when someone doubts you or tells you that you can't do something, and then it's like, oh yeah, watch me.
I've definitely been there. And you know what? Sometimes that kind of negative motivation can be incredibly powerful, especially early on in our journey.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's that fire in your belly that says, I'll show you, I'll prove you wrong. It can give you that extra push to work harder, to defy those expectations, to prove those doubters wrong.
But it sounds like there might be a downside to this kind of motivation.
There can be. If you're not careful, relying solely on proving others wrong can become a bit of a trap. It can lead to resentment, burnout, and you might find yourself chasing goals that aren't truly aligned with your own values and aspirations.
So you're saying it's important to be mindful of where our motivation is coming from.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between proving the doubters wrong and staying true to yourself and what truly matters to you.
That's a really important point. Now, speaking of balance, Fire Up Your Motivation also emphasizes the importance of taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Oh, absolutely. They talk about how we can't pour from an empty cup. In other words, if we're not taking care of our own well-being, our motivation is inevitably going to suffer.
It's like trying to run a car without any fuel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, managing our stress levels.
Getting some exercise.
Yes. All of these things play a crucial role in maintaining our energy levels, our focus, and ultimately, our motivation.
It's like investing in your motivation toolkit. You need to have the right tools and resources to keep yourself going.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it really is an investment, and it's one that pays off in every area of our lives.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From visualization and harnessing anger to the importance of fairness at work, positive reinforcement, and taking care of ourselves, it's been a whirlwind tour of the world of motivation. So as we start to wrap things up, what stands out to you as the most important takeaway for our listeners?
For me, it's the reminder that motivation isn't some magical quality that some people have and others don't. It's a skill. It's something that we can learn, we can cultivate, and we can strengthen over time.
I like that. Motivation as a skill.
Exactly. And the more we understand about what motivates us, both on a personal level and in the context of our work and relationships, the more we can use those insights to create the conditions for success.
I think that's a great way to put it. And what I love about the sources we've looked at today is that they offer different lenses through which to view motivation, personal drive, workplace dynamics, and the importance of long-term sustainability.
And the key takeaway for me is that we don't have to choose just one. We can actually integrate all of these perspectives to create a more holistic approach to motivation.
So it's about finding what works best for you and then putting it into practice.
Exactly. Now, as we start to wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. We've talked a lot about the power of visualizing our desired outcomes, that dream job, the successful business, the fulfilling relationships.
Yeah.
But what about visualizing the journey itself? Visualizing those challenges, those setbacks, those moments when you feel like giving up.
That's such an interesting point.
Because let's be real, the path to success isn't always smooth sailing. There will be bumps along the way. There will be times when you feel frustrated, discouraged, or even tempted to quit. But by mentally preparing ourselves for those challenges, we can actually build our resilience and increase our chances of staying committed to our goals.
It's like giving yourself a mental preview of the obstacles you might encounter so that when they actually show up, you're not thrown off course.
Exactly. And by doing this, you're strengthening those mental muscles. You're building that inner resolve that will help you navigate the inevitable ups and downs of pursuing any meaningful goal.
So to all of our amazing listeners out there, remember, your motivation is yours to cultivate. Use the tips and insights we've discussed today as building blocks. Experiment, adapt, find what works for you, and never, ever stop believing in your ability to achieve incredible things.
Because you absolutely can. It's been an absolute pleasure diving into this topic with you today. We can't wait to see what you accomplish.
And until next time, keep those goals in sight. Keep that motivation burning bright and keep on diving deep. It really is all about the journey, isn't it?
It is. And by embracing the whole journey, with all its ups and downs, we can learn and grow so much more than if we're just focused on the destination.
That's a really great point. Something I've been thinking about lately is that it's okay if our motivation isn't always at 100%.
Yeah. It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking we need to be on all the time, like super motivated every single day. But that's just not realistic.
So what do we do when we hit those motivation slumps? Any advice for our listeners on how to get back on track?
Absolutely. I think the first step is just to acknowledge that you're in a slump. Don't beat yourself up about it. It happens to everyone.
We're all human.
Exactly. Then try to figure out what might be causing the dip in motivation. Are you feeling overwhelmed, stressed, maybe a little burned out? Once you have a better understanding of what's going on, you can start to address it.
So it's like troubleshooting your motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it might be something as simple as taking a break, changing up your routine a bit, or maybe connecting with some supportive friends.
Just to kind of recharge.
Exactly. But
Wow.
sometimes you might need to dig a little deeper, like revisit your goals, maybe break them down into smaller, more manageable steps, or even adjust your approach if what you're doing isn't working.
It's all about being flexible and finding what works for you in that moment.
Absolutely. And remember, even small steps forward count as progress. Even when you're not feeling super motivated, just keep showing up, keep taking action. Consistency is key.
It's like they say, motivation gets you started, habit keeps you going.
Love that.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to say about motivation. We've explored so many different facets. Visualization, harnessing anger, fairness in the workplace, the power of positive reinforcement, and of course the importance of taking care of ourselves. It's been an incredible journey.
It really has. Hopefully, our listeners are feeling inspired and equipped with some practical tools to boost their own motivation and achieve their goals.
I think they are. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. What resonated with you the most from today's deep dive? What are some of your favorite motivation hacks? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
We're always so inspired by our amazing community.
And until next time, keep those goals in sight, keep that motivation burning bright, and keep on diving deep.